What's up guys, Yoshi's here with another Rogue Company video. I've been playing Rogue Company for the last couple weeks and I'm pretty addicted. I wanted to share some of the things that I've learned from my games and give you 30 tips that I think can help you to get better. So stay tuned for the entire video. Hopefully you'll learn at least one or two things. And if you do learn anything, please go ahead and like and subscribe, and I will be sure to continue to put out more content like this. Alright guys, let's get into it. I think my first tip is going to sound a little controversial, but number one is do not buy in round one. You have enough to upgrade your secondary or buy some gadgets, but I promise you it'll be much better in the long run if you just save your money for round two so you can upgrade your assault and get a gadget. Tip number two is minor, but if you roll a little bit before the gate opens, you can get a jump ahead of the rest of your team. So this is mostly helpful if you are trying to go and plant first, so you can get those extra dollars. This next one is going to sound obvious, but you always want to reload when you're in cover. So whether that's around a corner or ducking behind a box, you want to make sure that you're not exposed while you're reloading because you don't really have a chance to fight back. The more you play, the more familiar you'll get with the maps, and you'll start to understand the flow of movements and where people go. So my next tip is to be a trap for the enemy. So here you can see my teammate coming up towards me. I know there's an enemy coming, so I want to just aim down sight and be ready for that person to get the easy kill. I'll talk a little more about following up and being aggressive later in the video, but you also want to try to confirm kills when it makes sense without getting too reckless. Round one will always be a pistol round, so you want to make sure that you know the pistol of your character. Is it a longer range, heavy hitting, slow firing gun? Is it automatic weapon? Make sure you understand what the mechanics are of this first pistol round, because if you win, it sets you up really well for the rest of the game. So another advanced tip would be knowing how many shots it takes to down an enemy. And this will vary by range because there is damage drop off. But for example, with Dallas's gun at close range, you can down someone with 3 shots. So try to get those numbers in your head so you know that if you've hit them twice, you can be aggressive and go for that last shot. My next buying tip is for round two. So in round two, I always go with my primary weapon and a throwable. So you can typically afford these if you've gotten at least one down in the first round. Otherwise, you can at least get your primary weapon after round one. You want to take advantage of the third person view as much as possible by swapping shoulders. So you always want to keep your cursor away from the walls. So as I approach this wall, I swap it over so that my cursor is in open space. So I'll just put you in a better position to attack the enemy. Next tip is to keep it rolling. So in situations where the enemy has the upper hand, if you roll, it'll throw off their aim and they'll end up wasting ammo. So this tries to turn the advantage back in your favor and give you enough opportunity to get the kill.
Crouch moving from the boxes, and when you aim, it'll go over top automatically.
Flanking can be very powerful in Rogue Company, especially when the enemy thinks you're in one position and you rotate around to get behind them. So this can be done at really any time. Sometimes you'll do it at the start of the game to create some separation from your team and get different angles. But here I use it to get behind the team, get a kill, and they did not have enough time to react. You'll hear the term focus fire in many shooters, but it really just means shooting at one person at the same time that your team is shooting at them. So the extra damage usually results in getting a kill faster than if you were shooting by yourself. Understand the evolution of your character. The later in the game it is, the more perks and upgrades you're likely to have. So for Dallas, for example, he becomes a great flanker when he has his quiet perk and he has his silenced assault rifle. For each rogue, try to understand what your ideal loadout looks like in the endgame and work to build towards that. This might be another controversial tip, but my advice is to completely ignore the melee weapon. At $4,000, it's just way too expensive versus some of your other perks or throwables, which you'll use much more frequently. I find that you'd only get in 1 or 2 chances to actually use your weapon, your melee weapon, per game, so it's not worth it right now. When you and a teammate are both facing the same direction, you want to peek that corner with them so that it puts the enemy in a 2v1 situation. This way, the opponent has to pick who they're going to shoot at, and you have a better chance of taking out the enemy. There are a bunch of throwables and abilities that can zone out an area, which will force the enemy to either go a certain direction or take damage or be slowed by going in the direction that you want them to. 2 tips here. You can align your crosshair while still in cover so that you have a better shot when you pop up from behind cover. Second tip, remember that when you are getting ready to throw something, you do stand up, so you'll be an easy target for anyone looking in that direction. This tip will have a little bit more footage than normal, but I wanted to show that sometimes it's best to go on a flank by yourself if you notice that most of the enemy team is in one location focused on your team's spot. So in this last round, I go all the way around, I'm able to get behind the enemy, and while they're still focused on where my team initially set up, I'm able to get 2 quick kills. As you move around the map, you always want to keep your crosshairs where you expect enemies to be, but this is especially important when you're going in an area that you expect to find enemies. So here, I knew that my teammates had been down in this area. I knew that there was a hiding spot behind the site, so I was already aiming there after I downed the first person. This tip applies for all guns, but it's really helpful for shotguns, where you can line up your crosshairs while in cover, strafe out quickly, fire off a quick shot, and then get back into cover. When you drop out of the ship, make sure you're looking at the enemy flight paths, so you can see across the way how many people are going in one direction, if they're splitting up. This will give you a good indicator if someone is flanking or if they're all trying to stay on one side. They'll sometimes try to throw you off by flying into one spot and then go to another direction, but typically they just go where they're aiming. Following that last tip, you also want to check your flank, especially after your team has planted the bomb or hacked. So in this clip, I check over to the left side, see one person flanking, able to catch him off guard, and then I hear someone to my right, so I'm able to pick off and get 2 quick kills. The game does a great job with its audio cues, especially with footsteps, so make sure that you're listening out for people sprinting around corners so you know when they're about to jump in. In Rogue Company, people are bound to be hiding in corners. You always want to make sure that you're checking corners as you run past them. In this clip, I didn't check the corner, but somehow I still reacted fast enough to kill a guy, but he easily could have killed me as I ran past this box up ahead on the left. When you're behind cover and you see an enemy approaching, wait for them to start sprinting at you before you fire. Otherwise, they may be ADSing towards your direction and you might lose that fight. I talked about this earlier, but you always want to make sure that you're creating different angles of attack. So when pushing an enemy, try to spread out a little bit so that the enemy is forced to fight in different directions. This will give you that advantage because you can shoot at them from different sides and they will likely get confused by the direction of the bullets. This part isn't actually a tip, it's just another good example of zoning with the explosives.
Grenade? Oh, the knife.
go, there you go. He's weak, he's weak. He's one. There you go.
Earlier, I talked about watching the opposite team's flight path. Well, you can also trick them by flying towards the middle of your map so that they don't know which side you're pushing towards. I know ziplines look fun, but chances are there's an enemy on the opposite side. Don't go on these unless you're 100% sure there's nobody over there.
Got her, good job.
This one is much easier said than done. You're gonna have situations where you're literally 1 HP and your first instinct is gonna be to panic. Don't do that. Stay calm, line up your shots, and get the kills. Make sure you're communicating with your team so you know that they have your back if you've downed someone. My last tip is very generic. Practice makes better. Just keep playing the game. You'll start to learn the map more, learn all the rogues, and over time you'll start to improve. So just try to work on some of these things one at a time, and don't get frustrated if you start to lose a few games in a row. You might just need some time away and then you can pop back onto the game. If you've got any other tips for the community, feel free to leave your advice in the comment section below. If you've learned anything from this video, I'd appreciate a like. If you want to be notified of any future Rogue Company or really any video game video, make sure to subscribe, and I will try to keep uploading as much as possible. Thanks for watching, and I hope this video helps.